What if I told you that you can make pennies by selling on eBay? Well, that doesn't sound very fun, but it works. Well, hello there. Welcome or welcome back. My name is Brandon, and I'm the founder of the Card Pirates TCG store, aka the Card Pirate Captain. So, I've been throwing around this idea for a little while, and I'm just going to present it as I've been processing it. So, what I just said sounds really dramatic, but it's relatively true, right? When we're selling cards on eBay or similar marketplaces, it's a game that tends to be full of cents and not dollars, because we're selling a lot of times, especially early on, inexpensive cards with very thin margins. And even when we escalate to more expensive cards, they're often being purchased at best around 70% of their market value, which inherently tends to mean that you're not getting a lot out of them from what you're putting in. But that said, in order to get a hold of the expensive cards that do have those higher dollars, we have to make the change first. The cents, that is. In order to accumulate those, we have to understand how those products are going to move. So one thing that I have realized is that in kind of all aspects of products existing and selling and all that, you have three grades of inventory. Three qualities is the way I like to say it. And those three things are going to be high quality, good quality, and poor quality inventory. Now, each has its own characteristics and certain things that kind of comprise what they are and what they could be. But let me slow down for just a second, because I imagine when you hear me say each, you have your own connotations that come along with those phrases. When you think of especially something like high quality, you think it's really, really good. It'll last a long time, things along those lines. And obviously that doesn't necessarily apply to what we're talking about with trading cards, because, well, they're all kind of made about the same. When we're talking about poor quality inventory, you're probably thinking of it as it's just not good, like nobody wants it. But the reality is that high quality inventory, as I'm referring to it, is a product that tends to have a higher monetary value, oftentimes by a significant amount, and always greater margins. These are going to be your high dollar cards that you get for a really good deal. If you were to, say, open a random pack of cards and you spent $10 on the pack and you pulled out a $50 card, that would be a significant increase. In the same way, it also, in order to sell that $50 card, requires someone willing to give up $50. And when we're talking about trading cards, it's not a lot of people. Similarly, when you talk about good quality inventory, that's going to be the bulk of the things that move when you sell this stuff. That is your product that has reasonable margins, accessible prices, and is therefore much easier to move on a regular basis. That's going to build up the bulk of what you sell, and is oftentimes found in bulk. That would be your maybe moderate to low expense Pikachu, Snorlax, just your popular Pokemon cards. That would be your gameplay staples for games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic decks or similar, where popularity or viability in the game, as well as plenty of availability and good pricing, tends to make these things usable for people or desirable, and therefore makes them easy to move. And also, if there's plenty of them, supply and demand demands that they are not at an extreme price, because they're actually not that special. It's just that we all like them collectively. Then you have poor quality inventory. That's going to be stuff that is harder to move. And a lot of times that tends to come from the purchasing side of that inventory. Poor quality stuff is the stuff that sits for a while because it is inherently less desirable. But we don't always collect that product in a very intelligent manner. And sometimes that means that we don't have the margin to reduce the price to make it more accessible to people while it is still undesirable. So if an undesirable product is expensive, it's never going to sell. And if an undesirable product is cheap, you might just sell some of it, if not all of it, if you make it worth someone else's while. Think of that old adage, you couldn't pay me to use that, to eat that, to whatever, right? This kind of brings me to the reasoning I bring this up. In my searching of different inventory to collect, specifically referring to the different bulk that I've been trying to accumulate, I have recognized that there is kind of a wide range of what you'll see. Now, I have most recently been looking into more Yu-Gi-Oh! Bulk, as I have listed everything that I have had and would like to get some more to begin to add on, right? And the two major things that are crossing my mind when I think about this is, A, what's a reasonable price for what I might get? Because in pretty much every situation, the bulk is randomized. You'll get duplicates. It'll double up, triple up, even more. And you'll be winding up with, instead of, say, 1,000 unique cards, with maybe, let's say, 500 unique cards. With that said, you also have a variety of prices and some sellers willing to do certain things that others won't. One of those things is guaranteeing a certain amount of rarer cards. I've seen a handful of sellers on different marketplaces who are selling Yu-Gi-Oh! Bulk, and they say, hey, I'll include, 40 hollows, 100 hollows, 20 hollows and 100 rares, or, some combination of that type of thing. Basically, the top 10% of that 1,000 is guaranteed to be rarer cards, and then the rest is going to be your more common and uncommon bulk. And those pricings that people will list those for very wildly. I've seen them, some stuff with no notation, no like, hey, you'll get X amount of this or that for less than $20 shipped. But I've also seen upwards of $60 saying, hey, you'll get, 5 rare cards included. And so knowing that there's that span in between, it creates a dynamic where you have to kind of consider what is the price per card and what would happen if I got, say, half of that and it seemed like it really wasn't going to move. That's what I've been mulling over, is essentially, is this going to be good quality or poor quality inventory? And this is where we as purchasers of inventory get to kind of create that answer. So if I am concerned that I might be taking on poor quality inventory, well, that would mean that I am assuming I'm going to be overpaying for something, which, if that's what I believe, then I should probably not buy that. Even if I'm sitting here thinking, well, but what if there's, a $10 card in there? Then instead of really spending $35, I only really spent $25, right? I just made a third of my money back. But what's the likelihood of that happening? Probably not high. When I bought the Magic Bolt that I purchased, I did my research and found some that was essentially going to be around $25, $26 for the 1,000 cards, which meant that it was about 2 cents a card, and that was shipped. The seller was selling it for around $14 and then added on the shipping. And what that essentially means is it's only going to take a severe fraction of those Magic cards selling for me to make back that money. Most of my Magic cards are listed between $1.79 and $1.99 as of right now. So let's just assume that I sell 10 of my $1.89 cards. I've now made back a good amount, because on every single card that I sell at $1.89, I'm going to make back 40 plus cents. So it's things like that that are worth considering, and it helps us with the idea of making sure that we avoid that poor quality inventory. But what happens if you wind up with poor quality inventory? Maybe you are seeing this and you just spent money on a bunch of stuff. Nothing's moving. It hasn't been moving. It's been a month, 2 months now, and you're just not sure what to do. Well, there's also answers for that question. Think about this. Sometimes people are going around and they are looking for a good deal to get a gift for someone. Maybe they know that their grandchild, nephew, child, cousin, whoever is into Pokemon or is into Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, and they would like to get them some stuff for that. They don't really know anything about it. They're not looking for anything specific. They're just looking for something fun that they can give them. Well, you could fabricate like little makeshift booster packs, right? Imagine that you create this product where you have some dead inventory, some poor quality stuff. It's not moving. It's worth nothing to you if it sits there. So you grab 10 cards and you throw them together and you say, hey, like, I got 10 cards and I'm going to sell them for X amount, whatever that makes sense to however much you spent for them, and offer them as homemade booster packs. And maybe you can set it up in a similar way as legitimate ones do, right? And you sell them at a lower price as long as you can for those 10 cards than if someone was to go to Target and buy them. So that way people can go out and they can see, hey, you know what? I want to open something, but I don't necessarily want to go and get one from a big box store where I'm going to pay up higher, or my local game store where I'm not really going to be able to get as much per se. You make people a product that they want out of a product that you don't. Alternatively to something like that, you can sell off the bulk. Yeah, you might end up taking a loss depending on how much you spent on it, but taking a loss isn't the end of the world as long as you don't make it a consistent habit. So this is where I would say, especially early on, similar to myself, maybe kind of walk before you run in that space, right? I bought the 1,000 Magic cards from a online marketplace because I wanted to see how it would work, right? It was kind of an experiment. It actually was an experiment, is still. I'm trying to find out if I purchased it at this price from this person who had a variety of different sets, is this product going to move in a reasonable amount? We'll see, right? It's the same gamble that I made when it came to the Yu-Gi-Oh side of things, where I didn't know how Yu-Gi-Oh was going to move in the marketplace. So I made the distinctive decision that I was going to list them. I started with the same floor price. That's what I was talking about in the last video I made. And then I realized that that floor price wasn't working. At least not as well as it seemed like it could if I were to adjust it. So I did. And since that point, I even sold more Yu-Gi-Oh today, right? I have actually, in the last several days, it seems, sold more Yu-Gi-Oh cards than Pokemon cards. Now, that's just one nuance of this. But all that is to say, be smart about what inventory you're purchasing, right? Be aware of what you're going to intake so that you're not stuck with something that then you have to move and potentially take a hit on. That said, if we're talking about how do we go from good quality to high quality inventory, because let's assume we've successfully avoided the poor quality inventory we were just talking about, how do we go from, you know what, I'm moving this product now, how do I get the better stuff? You're going to have to potentially go out and start negotiating with people for it. So if you see somebody selling a collection in your local area online, you reach out to them and you say, hey, you know what, I'm looking to purchase collections and I'll buy it. And you start at the best situation you would like, right? It's probably going to be 70% of market. And if that person says, absolutely not, I won't take that, maybe they'll hit you back with something. And if they don't right away, you just ask them, okay, so what percentage of markets would you be willing to sell these to me for? And then I would approach it with giving yourself a space to just read what this person's saying and not just like literally read, but actually try to understand where they're at. Because a lot of times, especially if you're early on in a process, a person's going to think that they have something that is more valuable than it might be, and they're going to be unwilling to move off of their perceived value of something until there enough time has gone on for them to recognize that, you know what, I'm just tired of it not moving. The reason why when something sits for a while in a store or on a marketplace, people automatically start dropping the price. And when it comes to marketplaces, it tends to happen more quickly than I think a lot of people realize, because most people get anxious when something's sitting there and it's not moving. They're not willing to be patient to let it run its course. They just want it to be, hey, like I thought maybe I could get $100 out of it. Oh, you know what? I'm not getting $100. Yeah, I'll drop the price by $10. Yeah, $90 is still good. It's still good. And then that $90 doesn't move it after another week. And so they drop it again. But now it's at 80, and now they feel really bad about 80 because they're just like, oh man, I really wanted to get more than this. I really think that it's worth more. And maybe they wind up selling it for 80, right? And then they look back and they go, you know what? What would have happened had I just let it sit for those 2 weeks? Because the chances are, especially when it comes to cards, the person who's going to buy your product has not seen it yet. Because if they'd seen it, they probably would have bought it. Don't get too worried after days or even a couple weeks of something sitting and it not moving. Now, I made the adjustment with my Yu-Gi-Oh! After a couple weeks of selling. I had Yu-Gi-Oh! Listed. I had been listing it the same way as my Pokemon, and I started recognizing as I was listing things that I didn't perceive the value to be the same, especially with such a much smaller audience. So after a couple of weeks, I adjusted, and I didn't fully adjust to where everything was cheaper. I just adjusted the floor price and then the things that were directly above it, so that way the inventory has a more clear arc of value. The stuff that I had listed above $1, or rather above $2, stayed there. I didn't go back and change like the cards that I had listed at $2.99 or $5.99 or something like that in order to try to make a sale. And I honestly have not been in the habit of doing price changes on all of my products on my store. Certain things that I had listed early on that I know I had for sure well overpriced, I have adjusted. And I am currently running a couple of different sales, but I'm doing so in order to move larger quantities of inventory. I'm not fixated on one card moving. I'm not even fixated on all of them moving. The discounts I'm running at the moment are 15 and 10% off of 5 and 3 cards respectively. I'm not doing anything wild. I'm not saying you can buy 3 get 2 free. No, I want to make a margin off of all of these. So I'm going to give you a reasonable discount. And the incentive is actually to get people to purchase a card that is more valuable and then supplement the rest of it with bulk so that they can get the 15% off of the expensive card essentially, and then get a little bit more to just pad it. But all that is to say, you have your different types of inventory. We definitely want to avoid poor quality as much as we can. But if you wind up with it, don't panic. You can do something with it. You just got to be creative. Obviously, we want to have our good quality inventory and our high quality. But be patient with both in the selling and the procurement of it. Because getting good quality inventory is something that takes you being smart about what you spend. And getting high quality inventory requires the same. And if you want any of it to move, whether it's high, good, poor, or anything in between, you got to be patient. because the person who is going to get it from you probably hasn't looked at it yet. But when they do, they will. But anyway, if TCG treasure is what you seek, consider sailing with the pirates next time. Card Pirate Captain,